Steve Chamradi, hello and welcome. I think I'm just going to get into it. Today I'm going to talk about a podcast that I watched/listened to. It was an episode of the Huberman Lab titled How to Make Yourself Unbreakable. And it was an interview with retired Navy Seal DJ Shipley. Okay, so what about this podcast do I want to talk about? Well, I want to talk about it in the context of self-improvement in relation to political ideology and the limitations of forsaking one for the other. I know that sounds like a big broad topic, but I'm just going to talk about it with little slices from this to kind of highlight a few ideas. It's by no means a fully fleshed out kind of thesis or idea. And I just want to talk about that slightly with the critical lens of trying to figure out if your ideological opponent is cooking or not. So, if you haven't figured it out already, this will be a left-wing critique. Just so you know, I think everyone from liberals all the way to fascists or Nazis are all on the right wing. You know, if you are pro-capitalism, you're right-wing to me, because to be left-wing is to want a different organization of the economy. But the way that I like to think about it is that I believe in equality and justice, as I like to think, you know, most people do. I just believe in doing the things that actually make that happen. Is that a smug way of looking at it? Yeah, maybe. Okay, so what's the Huberman Lab podcast?
Welcome to the Huberman Lab podcast, where we discuss science and science-based tools for everyday life.
It's very popular. It's run by Andrew Huberman.
I'm Andrew Huberman, and I'm a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine.
So it's this sort of self-help or self-improvement podcast. I feel at the moment there's a lot of focus on self-improvement, and in some really, really good ways, that there is broader knowledge about nutrition, about exercise, about what it actually takes to implement a routine. Now, at the same time, there's a lot more grifters, there's a lot more, fakes, there's a lot more bullshit information. But, broadly speaking, a lot of people really want to focus on their health and mental health and well-being. And the Huberman Labs podcast, it's a mixed bag. There's some good information, there's some bad information. So I guess another aspect of this video is about critical analysis and, engaging with these things critically. Because I think, self-improvement is all well and good, but it's obviously not the way to fix what I see as systemic problems. So the guest is DJ Shipley, who I actually came across through a lot of YouTube Shorts gun videos that were recommended to me.
Nice clean brake to the rear. You guys can see that. A little bit of take up, nice flat wall, 3 pounds of pressure, not a whole lot.
On the surface level, he and also Huberman, very charismatic, very well-spoken, very easy to listen to individuals. He talks about lots of different topics, but the ones I want to focus on are, he talks about his mental health struggles, his struggles with drug addiction, and how he overcame them and how he manages both through sort of pharmaceutical, medical protocols, and also through, his own routine, his own structuring of life. To give you what happened to him in a very shortened form is he was obviously in the military for years and years, had many, many injuries, had to recover from those, and basically became a drug addict seemingly without knowing it, in that he was prescribed multiples of different medications by his doctors, and he was on all these different meds. And he tells this very funny story, funny in a way, of basically going to rehab and experiencing extreme drug withdrawal, but not knowing that's what it was. He thought it was food poisoning, because he just thought he was taking his medications, and in fact he was completely addicted to multiple pharmaceuticals.
I laid down that bed and I started getting sick, and I was like, fucking food poisoning, throwing up, pissing myself, the whole thing. And I remember throwing up in this bucket, and this beautiful black nurse has this wet washcloth, and she's washing my face off, and I was like, I don't know what I ate. I was like, I'm so sorry. I feel so embarrassed. And she's like, it's okay. And I was like, I haven't eaten anything. I was like, I never get food poisoning. She's like, oh, honey, it's okay. And I can remember the look she gave me, like, you have no idea why you're here.
After this, he obviously still had a lot of emotional and mental problems. And the big thing that he credits to kind of changing his outlook is he got ibogaine and DMT treatment in a clinic in Mexico, I think run by veterans as well. And if you don't know, these are two very, very, very powerful hallucinogens, and there's some promising research to show that they're effective in treating PTSD, trauma, and, drug addiction, which are usually all kind of tied in together. It seems to work as this almost reset switch. And in his personal life, he did this and then was able to kind of confess to his wife about infidelities. He was able to work through all this stuff and really kind of rebuild his life. And that divorced from all other context, inspiring. Now, it's also something I can in part relate to. I was not in the military. I was not ever addicted to drugs. But, a few years ago, I was very overweight, over-medicated, severely depressed, severely anxious, distraught, and was suffering from what I now realize was post-traumatic stress disorder. And for me, exercise, therapy a little bit, and diet, therapy a lot. More so the power that exercise and diet had both on my physical and mental health can not be overstated. It was transformative. I feel like I changed as a person completely, that I was a different person before, and I had to rebuild myself into a new person, both physically and mentally. So whenever I hear stories like this, I can't help but feel some sort of empathy. Now, another thing that I think has been incredibly important, as well as me getting physically and mentally better, is I really developed my political ideology. Just actually understanding more how the world works. That was really important to not being afraid anymore, not being scared, understanding the world. And I think that was tied in. Now, what I think is fascinating about this interview is that I would like to think, and maybe at a certain point in my life, I really did think that, if you fix your diet and exercise and do the therapy, the sort of like morality and political beliefs would come with it. And it kind of doesn't. And this interview is kind of proof, because he has done all this healing, which I believe he has done. And he's fixed all these relationships in his life and really just made a huge turnaround. But he's still evil. And I don't mean that as he inherently is a bad, evil person, but he supports an evil system. And, it's when your ideology is limited, it doesn't matter how much of the other stuff you do. Now, I'll talk about this a bit later. Same way, you can have the most amazing developed political ideology, and if you ignore the other stuff, it doesn't mean shit. Because if you're not able to do things, if you're not well, if you're not fit, if you're not in control, if you don't have that agency, how do you implement these beliefs? Now, I want to point out a few examples in this interview where I think you can see the limitations of their political beliefs. One is when they talk about the obesity epidemic, and he kind of really only talks about it in terms of sort of individual failing. And I can understand somewhat the frustration of seeing people not help themselves. And he seems to really be frustrated and not understand it. Why aren't people helping themselves?
Anybody in the military, anybody in the fire department, anybody in special operations, the military in general, everybody's day always starts with fitness. When you're in boot camp, you wake up, you do a workout, and then you eat. When you go into buds, you wake up, you work out essentially all day long, go to sleep. It's the same thing. When you get to the SEAL team, you do the same thing. Everybody wakes up, everybody does fitness the very first thing, and then we start our day. It's been really successful. Why would I ever break that? You see guys, when they transition out, they get away from it. They gain a bunch of weight. They start drinking. You working out 5 days a week? No. Why? You've been doing it since you were 17 years old. Why would you break it now? Why?
Yeah, why do you think that happens?
Obviously, it's because when they're in the military, they're in a system that supports them working out. And then when they have to do it through their own willpower, They can't. I just think that's really obvious. But at no point is the sort of systemic issue ever raised. There's no discussion of that. There's no discussion of the role of the state, the role of corporations. It is just totally like, why aren't people doing this? They see it as individual action as a solution to systemic problem. Another time you see the limitations, and I thought this was fucking crazy to be honest, is Huberman starts to talk about, for lack of a better way of saying it, how the vibes are so supremely off at the moment. And, you know, he's right. He recognizes that just it's bad at the moment. Things are bad and they're getting worse and it's scary and it's an unprecedented time.
And, you know, the United States in particular, like we're at a pretty dark moment. It took me a while to actually like really internalize that.
We know what he's talking about. Like, what's the live streamed fucking Holocaust that we've all been witnessing for the last 2 years, you know?
The Charlie Kirk thing, same week or just a few days before, that woman getting killed on the light rail.
It's crazy. Hundreds of thousands of Arab Palestinians slaughtered, video after video, just a live streamed genocide. And the examples he cites are two white people. Anyway, just that shows that they just can't, they can sense the problem, they just can't see it. It's like they have blinkers on.
You know, statistics are one thing and they're important, but seeing people murdered in cold blood in either very deliberate or in what seemed like almost kind of like random, like, okay, there was a person there, so he killed her. If it was someone else, they might have killed her. Maybe not. Who knows what the motivation was.
And with DJ Shipley, we can see the limitations in his ideology and his growth, because when he talks about the ibogaine and DMT therapy, this powerful hallucinogenic therapy. So when you take the drug, you have these very powerful hallucinations. And for him, it was like reliving moments in his childhood and times he had hurt like friends and family. But he makes it very, very clear that he did not experience any of his war experiences, any war flashbacks. And he says that none of the veterans he talked to have war flashbacks.
And I will tell you that not a single person that I have ever done ibogaine with has ever had any military experience. It's always been your childhood and then a reflection of what you've done to your wife and kids. You become so empathetic to everyone and everything. Every single one is the most painful thing you've ever been a part of. But it's scary, man. It is. Because you're afraid. And when I talk to guys, they're so afraid they're going to come out of it and be a pacifist.
He does not see the people he fought against and killed as people. And it just kind of shows how ingrained it is that even if you feed someone this powerful drug, if it ain't there, it ain't there. They ain't digging it up. And I think it's just wild. And also there's just contradictions that I find quite absurd. I just want to show these two clips together.
How palpable toxicity is. You want to be hateful sometimes. And they're like, hurt people, hurt people. You've been hurt and now you want someone else to feel that exact same thing. So when you see something hateful on social media, what's the first thing you do? You go to the comment section, you read, yep, I feel that too. I like that comment, I'm gonna comment underneath it. You just start to project that hate over and over and over again. If I say, look at it, I'm not gonna get involved in that. Actually, I'm just gonna unfollow this person because every time I see you're saying something hateful, slowly but surely it's getting out that toxicity. It allows the best form of you to continue to go forward. But yeah, I mean, you gotta protect your peace. There is nothing like hunting a human being who's hunting you. Nothing.
Amazing. And that's kind of my big point, is that you can do all the self-help in the world, but you have to work on the other stuff separately. And there's not much incentive for him. There's not much dissent to that ideology. So, you know, the expectation can't be that high that he'll change. I'm not saying you shouldn't judge his actions if you want to. I'm not making this video to make myself seem morally superior to him. That's not my point. I don't fucking care. I'm talking about systemic issues. I'm using him as an example. And I think my point is also, don't just develop your political ideology and not your mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. Because you could have the most buttoned up left-wing ideology, but if you're abusing, hurting the people around you, how the hell are you going to convince anyone that it's good? You have to be an example. You know, I always think the most important rule of being left-wing is be normal. Be a well-rounded individual, and then you won't have to convince people through argument. You can convince it through action. Okay, time for the conclusion and a little addendum. So I recently found this clip.
And one of the things that stuck with me the most about not really taking a life, but seeing the human aspect on the backside is having to walk the family past him. And that's their dad. They feel the same way about him as I do about mine, same way you do about yours. And that's a human element you just can't get around. Like, they freak and they start bawling and they look at you and it's like, oh my God, I did that. And then it gets really weird when they're just old enough to watch that turn to hatred. And you can see it in their eyes. They look at that, they look right at you, and it just dials up. Oh.
So we can see here he has a sort of limited empathy. Really, he's just rationalized it away. So there's not much interrogation there. Also, I just want to add, if it seems like I've been really charitable to him, it's only because I don't see it as very productive to really go for him and attack him, because by all presentation, he's an upstanding, thoughtful, charismatic, and likable individual. So it just make me seem like this fucking asshole. And, you know, even if I said things that were true and correct, it just doesn't really progress things very well. I don't think. Like, the reason I'm making this video is because I was watching a bunch of his content and still am, because he is watchable and a very good communicator. One of the things I find funny about military guys in general and him is they use these sort of hyper-specific terms. Like, he refers to himself as a knowledge transfer expert, which that's just a teacher. But also, he is really good at transferring knowledge. He can explain things really well. What I think I'm really trying to highlight is we shouldn't let this message of resilience and these methods of thinking about and dealing with trauma become solely associated with the status quo and American hegemony. And these more individualized methods of help and improvement should be folded into our theory and our concept of what it takes to help the collective, because they're not antithetical to each other. We should become upstanding and charismatic and good communicators, but about our beliefs and our politics and our ideology. Okay, I think that's all I have to say, so slán.